Hello students, welcome to Ethics Chapter 1. This is going to be Lesson 1 of 2. It's going to be a pretty brief lesson. Let's take a look at our objectives. Okay, so our lesson objectives, now the objectives you see listed here, once you complete both lesson 1 and 2, you'll be able to meet all these objectives. So some of them won't be met until the second lesson, but I'm going to go over all of them now. So define ethics, Catholic ethics, relativism, compassion, tolerance, judgment, objective and subjective. Practice making ethical judgments by analyzing examples and defending your judgments. Explain why the concept of relativism is problematic for the study of ethics. We're also going to explain why it's attractive. What is it about relativism that's a positive? What are the some of the truths of relativism? And we'll look at the pitfalls of those arguments by citing examples. Then we'll look at 3 specific reasons it's problematic and cite evidence for support. And then by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to demonstrate working knowledge of the concepts by completing an analysis question and discussing your analysis with your team. And here you see your vocabulary words. So Chapter 1 is pages 3 through 19. And all of these words are going to be on your reading quiz. So check PowerSchool for when it closes. They're also listed on PowerSchool in a document you could download if you want to say print this list and then take notes of the definitions. By the way, this PowerPoint is also on PowerSchool for you to take notes on. And then finally, remember you have a Quizlet on PowerSchool, and then you also have the Kahoot links, and they could be found on the Chapter 1 page so that you have that to study with as well. So the main topic for today is just looking at what is ethics, what are Catholic ethics. So ethics comes from the Greek word ethos, which can be translated, often it's translated as character. So the discussion we had in class to begin was how would you define character? What is it to say, he's a person of character? Or how would you define your own character? And basically what character means is it's the decisions, and I'm sorry, I'm not very good at writing with a stylus. It's the decisions that a person, maybe if I do my finger, that a person, I don't think that's any better, makes. It's the decision a person makes and the kind of person she becomes. Sorry, by virtue of her decisions. So I know that's not, my stylus is not writing very nicely today. So basically your character defines who you are as a person. Another way to define ethics is as the study of what one should or ought to do. That's another way to look at it. But when we look at the relationship between character and what we ought to do, it shows that ultimately ethics is asking the question, who am I and what do my decisions have to do with the person I become? So at the end of the day, sometimes we say in American culture, people will say something like, well, I cheated on a test, but I'm not a bad person. Well, the whole point of ethics in your character is that if you cheat on tests, I don't know why it's not writing well. If you cheat on tests, then you become a cheater. If you lie, you become a liar. So we are defined by our actions. So that's what ethics is about, making choices and how are those choices going to, define me as a person. So ethics can be studied from a secular perspective. So if you think about it, what are some examples of how ethics is studied from a secular perspective? Think of the bar exam. Think of legal ethics. One of the things a lawyer has to do is pass an ethics test. Think of medical ethics. I'm not sure if doctors actually have to pass a test on medical ethics, but ethics is something we're all care about, not just people of faith. Now, what difference does Catholic ethics make? Why are we studying ethics not just from a secular perspective, but from a Catholic perspective? It has to do with the goal of ethics. Aristotle, who was the father of modern philosophy and who could be called the father of ethics, when he was considering ethics, he was pre-Christian, so he was not a Christian. He was basically what we could call an atheist, and but he thought that ultimately, to be happy, you had to be a person of virtue. So for him, true happiness comes from leading an ethical life. Now, as Christians, we believe that that's not just applying to the life here and now, it also applies to your eternal life. And this is going to have an impact on how we study ethics. If a person has to make a decision to sacrifice his life, if you think that you're only going to live for this here and now, if you don't believe in an afterlife, there might not be enough incentive to give your life for someone else. There might not be an incentive to be brave. People might think, well, if happiness is being an ethical person, how is it going to make me happy if I'm dead? So Aristotle may not have been all too ready to do things like sacrifice. Whereas for Christians, we believe that sacrifice and dying for one another is one of the highest virtues, because that's what Jesus does for us. So the fact that we do believe in an eternal life is going to impact the way we go about being ethical people. And that's going to kind of come out as we study ethics throughout this semester. So that's all the input I wanted to do for today. One of the neat things about ethics is that it's a very practical subject. I couldn't take calculus because I don't know how to actually do it. But everybody knows how to do ethics because it's all about trying to figure out what I should do. So we all have a lot of practice with this. So before we get into any more on the topic of relativism and why it's dangerous, we're going to take some time to look at the ethical cases featured on page 6 and 8 of your textbook and read through the cases as a team. And you're going to just pick one that you want to look at and then discuss as a team the ethical dilemma. And have one person record your notes for the team. What would you do and why? And this is the most important part. You have to explain why you're doing what you're doing, and because we're going to find out that's going to be very important. You're going to afterward ask yourselves, did your team members reach a consensus, or were there differing opinions, and what factors led to the differences in your outcomes or your conclusions? And what I have here, it says ethics is more like divination than potions. One of the things that makes studying ethics difficult is that, unlike potions where it's like a formula, and as long as you do the formula properly, it's going to turn out the right way, with ethics, it's more like what Hermione would call it's a woolly subject. There's not always one right answer, and a lot of times the circumstances make a big deal in how you decide whether something's ethical or not. And there's also the idea that some things can be more or less good or bad. So not everything is only good only good or only bad. Some stuff is in between, and a lot of times the circumstances determine where it falls on a continuum. So that makes ethics something difficult to study, because there isn't like, you could just say A plus B equals C and then put, different, actions in the equation. So there are certain things we would argue that are always wrong, that are always evil. But a lot of times, even with things that are evil, like killing, another person, well, if someone puts a gun to your head, that would mitigate your blameworthiness for having to kill someone, because that person isn't totally innocent. But we'll be looking at those things, and I just kind of wanted to give you these circumstances to kind of see how that bears out. And again, do this with your team, and once you're done, you're going to put your notes on PowerSchool, where the assignment is called Classwork 2, and it's on the Chapter 1. Whoops. What just happened there? The Chapter 1 page. And if you are absent, please make this up. So if you are absent and you're watching this because you were absent, please do this assignment individually. You're just going to pick one case and write up your notes about it, and then submit it via email if you're submitting it late. Okay, thank you. That is the end of lesson 1.